Isolation. Stay away from all the subway stations. Now's the time to limit your relations. This is info for your conservation and observation. I am at my home. I am all alone. I am at my home in isolation. Isolation. Time for practicing your masturbation. Sorry that you canceled your vacation. It's not just you, it's the whole entire nation. In isolation. I am at my home.
I'm at my home.
I am all alone.
I'm all alone.
I am at my home.
I'm at my home.
In isolation. My constipation in isolation has really helped my toilet paper situation. Should hold up depending on the duration that they keep us in isolation. I am at my home.
I'm at my home.
I am all alone.
I am all alone.
I am at my home.
I am still at my home.
I am in isolation.
In isolation.
Isolation, a conversation we should have with every single generation. The older people need a working vaccination. The younger people on a threat of decimation. I am at my home. I am all alone. I picked up the phone.
Hello.
And I said hello.
Hi.
Isolation breeds agitation. Unless you find a way to get some inspiration. Make a creation, film a claymation, or just eat chips and talk to friends while on PlayStation.
A little boy on the road. I said, hey man, you shouldn't be alone. I said, maybe you can give me a phone and then I can help you call home. You can't be more than 4'4", and I think it's about to get dark. He said, I'm 36 and I think I'm okay to walk through this park. And that's when I realized you should never judge a person by the size. And that's when I realized you should never guess an age with your eyes. And that's when I realized you should never judge a person by the size. And that's when I realized you should never judge an age, never judge an age with your eyes. Never judge an age, never judge an age. I saw a girl the other day. I bumped into her when I was on my way. I said, little girl, let me know what brings you to the mall here all alone. She said, maybe 'cause I'm 52. I've got my whole life hating damn people like you. That's when I realized you never judge a person by the size. That's when I realized you should never guess an age with your eyes. That's when I realized you should never judge a person by the size. And that's when I realized you should never judge an age with your eyes. Never judge an age. Never judge a person by the size. judge an age with your eyes.
Isolation, stay away from other subway stations. Now's the time to limit your relation. Information for your conservation and observation. Isolation, time for practicing your masturbation. Sorry that you canceled your vacation. It's not just you, it's the whole entire nation in isolation.
We believe we should confront anxiety with a clear plan to deal with its root causes.
Just before we get to questions, I'm supposed to model healthy behavior. Nice and sunny, but a little brisk.
My constipation in isolation has really helped my toilet paper situation. Should hold up depending on the duration. I have to stay in isolation. Isolation, a conversation you should have with every single generation. The older people need a working vaccination. The younger people are afraid of dissemination.
Listen, Canada is a modest country. We know we can't solve these problems alone. We know we need to do this all together. We know it will be hard work, but we're Canadian, and we're here to help. And it's our job as your government to do justice to that compassion and to that kindness that you show to one another each and every day. We can build a better world for our kids and grandkids. This is who we are. This is what we believe in. This is Canada.
Isolation breeds agitation unless you find a way to get some inspiration. Make a creation, film a claymation, or just eat chips and talk to friends while on PlayStation. Station.
This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, Give me lyrics, for this song, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, Give me lyrics, to the song, This part is where the verse goes, This part is where the verse goes, This part is where the verse goes, no shine, no lyrics, This part is where the verse goes, This part is where the verse goes, This part is where the verse goes, no shine, no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, Give me lyrics, for this song, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, Give me lyrics, for this song,
Maybe a rap part comes in here, I'm not sure, it's not clear. Maybe it would sound weird if we don't do a rap part. Maybe we do a verse that sounds similar.
This song
sound like
this part is where the verse goes. This part is where the verse goes. This part is where the verse goes. No shine, no lyrics, This part is where the verse goes. This part is where the verse goes. This part is where the verse goes. No shaggy, no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no lyrics, This song has no
know there are many of you who keep track of these things, but for those who don't, you should know that with his win yesterday, Seth Wilson moved past Arthur Chu into 5th place on our list of all-time game winners on Jeopardy. Matt Jackson is 1 game ahead of you, but Margie and Eric are going to cause problems for you, perhaps. Let's see what happens. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to There's Always Jeopardy with Pat and Jan. How you doing, Jan?
I'm doing well, Pat. How are you?
I'm great. I just wanted to give today's a very important day because we've been celebrating the Seth Wilson collection, the impressive run of this Jeopardy champion.
So good.
This is his 13th and final episode today, and we have him back with us on the show. We'll bring him out in a little bit. I can't believe it. What an exciting time!
Yeah.
What a ride this has been.
It has been impressive, but also quite entertaining. I know I made mention to the fact that I feel like Seth Wilson is my soul twin, but what a charming run of Jeopardy wins to watch, because you just watch this guy and you root for him. I have to say there have been some champs that I'm like, is this guy still on?
Yeah.
But Seth, I want Seth forever. Buzzy never. I said it.
Seth forever, Buzzy never. Got it. I just wanted to give everybody what I know some people are tuning in for, which is the tomato sauce update.
Yeah.
If you're a new fan of the show, my last grocery order, I accidentally got 8 jars of tomato sauce delivered to my house, and we're slowly working our way through them. So the last time we talked, we were half a jar down. We're at 7.5.
Yeah.
Since then, we had tortellini, and what we did somehow is have the first half of a different jar. So I'm not calling it 7 jars at this point. We're at 6 and 2 halves.
Now, did you think to marry the jars, or are they different types?
They're different types.
Oh, one's like a vodka and one's like a roasted red pepper or something.
Yeah, there's something for sure. Oh, Maggie didn't like one of them. Now we're getting.
Scoop.
What one didn't you like?
The one that was already open. That's why I didn't.
That's why you switched it out.
I switched it out.
And what was the flavor that you didn't like?
Like it's basil, but I love basil. It was just nasty.
Just a nasty basil. They brought us a nasty basil somehow. Isn't life hard enough?
I know.
Why do we need a nasty basil?
Who needs a nasty basil? That basil's coming in like, bitch.
Come on, basil. Why?
You're putting me on tortellini? There's some fresh pasta up in here.
So it's we've had a weekend since we last talked. What's been going on in Jamland?
Not a ton. I made a conscious decision today to eat more vegetables.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about doing that soon.
Yeah, because I looked in the screen today, and I'm getting one of those chin butts.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, maybe I should just put some vegetables in my body.
Go away.
Smooth it out.
Nice.
Or maybe I need more like pizza, and then that'll just like plump it up. I don't know. I'm not a.
Yeah, you got time. You can try all the things.
Yeah.
Do vegetables for a week. If that doesn't work out, do double pizza for a week.
Yeah. Double pizza. I think that's might be the way to go. You're a doctor, right?
Yeah. I feel like I'm a doctor.
Yeah, like you've done some online courses.
Yeah. Double pizza is the answer, I think.
Sure. Oh, this guy's seen every episode of ER. What was I going to do? Not listen to him?
Well, we reviewed the last episode, or we are reviewing the last episode. We watched it. A lot of crazy feelings. And we'll go through it with Seth, but but it's strange. It's strange to watch an episode, especially like we've fallen in love with this guy. Like we've been watching him forever. And then we see this episode and Seth's ripping it, just ripping it. But I know in my heart and in the pit of my stomach watching it that it is the last one.
But
that
listen,
it is fall apart somewhere.
In true Seth fashion, like it had me guessing until the end. Like it was entertaining until the end, because sometimes you can see somebody good and you're just like, oh yeah, they're for sure not going to win. I honestly was like, did they just not show the rest of his run? Because there were times where I was like, our boy's pulling it out. Like this is a joke.
They put him in the wrong order. Yeah. Yeah. But alas, it wasn't a mistake.
Alas.
It wasn't a mistake. If you're tuning in to the show for the first time somehow,
loser,
then maybe we have an opportunity here to show you a little bit of why we love Seth Wilson. We have somebody, Jesse McLaren, on Twitter @McJesse, put together like a clip of all of his stories put together. So I think there's no better way. Before we bring him out, we'll just we can just bathe in the glory that is Seth Wilson for a minute here. You want to play that, Dan?
I have a playlist that I listen to as I'm getting ready before I come on the show. It's selections mostly from the Top Gun and Karate Kid soundtracks.
Is there a lot of scandal involved in that era with actresses?
A tremendous amount, even if it wasn't true.
You were a Christmas elf.
I was, yes.
Are you a Chicago Bears fan?
They are probably my third favorite team in the league.
Some of your friends like to make fun of you because they say you have a unique laugh.
My friend Jeff said I sounded like a broken pig.
Didn't one of your co-workers ask you to dress as R2-D2 once? You were an underwear model at one time?
I was when I was a child.
And you're concentrating on gentlemanliness?
The original idea of being a gentleman has changed so much in the 21st century.
What's this about you once riding a tricycle into a pool?
Fortunately, my uncle was right there and scooped me up, and I quit riding the tricycle after that.
That's always been a Bulldog fan?
A convert later in life.
I'd forgotten some of those.
What an amazing conversation.
Oh, treasures.
Ladies and gentlemen, the champ himself, Mr. Seth Wilson. Seth!
Hey, everybody.
Welcome back, Seth. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pat and I were saying, like, this was like kind of a shocker of an episode, the final episode in the Seth Wilson collection. Yeah.
I remember this episode being pretty topsy-turvy and very, as many Jeopardy episodes do, had a very dramatic reversal at the end and was pretty exciting.
It was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be probably more exciting for the viewers than it was for you that day.
Yeah, probably. But it's hard to complain after having gotten to be out there for 2.5 weeks. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll just read out what the categories were for Jeopardy. A Song of Ice and or Fire. So
Game of Thrones reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Stamps. It's Scotch to Me. Trans Action. Means it has the phrase trans in it. Napoleon and Bone Apart. That's some clever work right there. Yeah. Bone Apart. Did you any feelings on any of those topics? Were you excited to see any of them?
I thought Song of Ice and or Fire would be a pretty good category for me because most pop music categories I'm pretty excited about, and I figured that's what that one would be. Stamps, I had no idea, and so tried to stay away from that one. I remember being excited about the Napoleon category, although I believe there was a daily double in that category and I missed it, and I was kicking myself. I totally froze, but I remember having read I took a class in college where we had to read a lot about the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt. And yeah, just like totally blanked on that one at the worst possible time. But yeah, that was kind of the Song of Ice and Fire and Napoleon were the two. In the as I looked at the board, that I was like, those are the two that I think I'm going to do well in.
I noticed that you did, sorry, Pat, really well in the Scotch category.
Yeah, which is funny because I hate Scotch. I mean, I like whiskey in general, but Scotch is just too much for me. But I remember, I think that category had the question about the Rob Roy in it, which like it's always been strange to me that somebody would want to drink a Rob Roy. And I think that the player in the middle, Eric, was a bartender and missed that one, which I was a little surprised about.
Wow.
But yeah. I remember doing well in the Scotch category too, which is funny considering I almost never drink it.
But it's so funny with those kind of like very niche categories. I always like, watching the show at home, I'm like, oh, I would never pick Scotch. But then a lot of times it's just kind of like in the zeitgeist. Like there was a thing where it's like the like a prefix of like 3 different types of Scotch, Levitt, something else, and something else. I'm like, oh, it's Glen. Just because you hear those words all the time. Yeah. And that tends to be, especially like as you're studying to be on the show, you find a lot of stuff that like that where, it's, I wouldn't know it if I hadn't studied for it. Or occasionally you find stuff where it's just like you pick it up, you've absorbed it through osmosis. And even though I would think like, oh my God, I never want to look at that category, it ends up being stuff where like, oh, I happen to know 4 or 5 of these. Yeah.
I was going to say that because you mentioned the pop songs, we found that you were very strong suited in pop culture, which I don't feel like a lot of Jeopardy champions are.
Yeah, that is one of my stronger areas, and it's funny because I was talking to Matt Jackson once, who was on in the fall of 2015 and won 13 episodes, one of an Ultra Champ. And he was telling me that some Quiz Bowl friends of his, he's one of the all-time greatest Quiz Bowl players in the history of academic high school competitions, and I believe he played in college as well. And he said that some of his Quiz Bowl friends sort of looked askance at Jeopardy in some ways because there's a lot of pop culture in it, and that they call that trash. Just because it's like that's the term, and they'll have trash tournaments from time to time where it's all pop culture stuff. So that did give me an advantage, I think, in some ways, just because that is, like as a regular reader of Gawker for years and years, that is stuff that just gets like drilled into the brain. So I guess that it's funny, like thinking that like such ephemera could end up being a strong suit, but it worked out pretty well for me.
Well, take me to the dump because I am trash. Whenever it's like famous Georges, I'm like, yep, there. No,
yeah,
Clooney.
For sure. It's also really funny that anything is trash when the nature of trivia is that it's trivial. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like what makes, I don't know, like why is it more important to know the capital of Latvia than it is the names of all 5 guys in Duran Duran? But it is funny the way that those decisions get made.
This is why, Seth Wilson, you are my soul twin. I feel like we share a hatred for geography.
Yeah, I studied a lot of geography before I was on the show because it is one of my weakest categories.
Ugh.
Well, that brings us into the double Jeopardy categories. Number 1, why geography?
A question I ask myself every day.
And then 12-letter words, floral book titles, alliterative TV actresses. Again, for us, couldn't be an easier category. But it's like can trip people up. U.S. firsts and tech tools. Anything you didn't like there?
I was alliterative TV actresses was the category that I felt the strongest about, and I got there was a daily double in that category, and I should have bet more. 12-letter words, which is where the other daily double was, the one that Margie found, which to her credit, she was able to pick it up. Those were the two going in that I felt the most strongly about. And she also outbuzzed me on Nichelle Nichols. That was one, and I feel like that's where her momentum started to turn around in that game.
Yeah.
And she played really well in Double Jeopardy after kind of getting off to a little bit of a rough start. But those were the ones that going into it, I felt the best about. Tech tools I wanted to stay away from because I'm not much. I work for a tech company, but I'm not much of a technician myself. So that one scared me a little bit. But yeah, again, like a pop culture or a literary linguistic category, those are always going to be the ones that I gravitate toward.
It's funny that you say like when Margie hit that daily double, you could almost see like something in her eyes. She just went like, it's on. Like she started playing like a bit aggressively, like she was taking it to the hoop in that last bit.
Yeah, for sure. She and that happens a lot. You know, you see somebody come on really strong right at the end. She got the daily double, and that very much energized her. And I think she used that momentum, carried that momentum into final, and played really, really well in that Double Jeopardy. It's certainly like among the best rounds I've ever played against. Yeah.
Excellent. Why don't we take a look at the stories from this episode?
There's a little bit of information here regarding Margie Ulner-Ott from Bethesda, Maryland. It sounds as if it could be the basis for a thriller. What happened in Beijing involving a $20 counterfeit bill?
Well, Alex, I was touring Beijing after a business trip. I had just gotten through the Forbidden City, which is miles and fields of miles and miles long, on my way to Temple of Heaven Park, and a bike rickshaw driver said, "Where are you going? I'll charge you $2 to go." So I got in, he drove me into a dark hutong, which is an alley, and said, "Oh, by the way, that's $200 US." And I said, "Well, pal, I'm on my last day. All I have is this $20 bill, but I'm not giving it to you till we go out to the road." And I gave it to him, and the only reason I had that 20 left is it kept getting rejected in the change machine, so as counterfeit.
Good. Lucky break. Lucky break. Eric Felke from Columbus, Ohio, celebrated his favorite NBA team winning the championship with how many of your friends? I'm going to assume we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yes, sir.
All right.
About 1.3 million of them.
Wait a minute. Whoa. How did that happen?
Well, the Cavs won the NBA title. It was the first Cleveland championship in 50 plus years. So the city was very excited. So
you're calling all of these other people your friends?
On that day they were, absolutely.
Okay, good for you. Seth Wilson is our champion. Some of the knowledge you have acquired comes from trips you made with your family. And after all, each one of these trips, your mom and pop used to quiz you and your sister, right?
Yes. When we would see things, when we would go to sites or take trips anywhere, they would make us commit things to memory. And then there would be verbal quizzes on the trip back, on the ride back.
Good. Now, let's get back into this. Seth, go again.
Napoleon for 600.
In 17...
Yeah, straight for that Napoleon. Well, let's look at Margie's story first. So on a business trip, paid a crooked rickshaw driver a counterfeit 20. That's great.
I feel like Margie is just she's got a lot going on. Like off the top, did I hear that she was like an Uber driver? She was something, and she was also like an Uber driver. And I'm like, you look at this woman, if I got into this woman's Uber, I would want to know her life.
Yeah, well, now you know just one small piece of it.
And I feel like Alex was so pumped about the story. Like,
yeah. Lucky break.
Money. And she was like, well, here you go, Alex. I don't know. I found her very charming. I thought she was so cute.
I have to say, Eric's story is nothing. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers won the championship. That's it. And Alex knew that already.
You know, you got to hand it to this fella, because he did take a story which was basically like, I went to a parade. And like, he still charmed me. he was still like, you know what? That day, 1.3 million people, they were my friends. And I'm just like, yeah, like, because we just had the, as Pat will tell you, we just had a championship here last year with the Toronto Raptors. And that resonates with people.
Oh, sure. I imagine people in Cleveland were probably excited about that story, but you're right. I went to a parade and kind of made it a riddle.
I like his cute little smile.
And then, of course, which is a great parting story, actually, because it's sort of the history of you being good at quizzes.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten about this, and when I was racking my brain and talking to my parents, trying to come up with additional stories, this was one that they had suggested. And it was kind of a nice final story to go out on.
I have a question about one of your other stories, Seth, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because we had a fellow Jeopardy enthusiast and someone who was in the mix to get the call, our good friend Jeremy Woodcock. And the episode we watched was when you told the story about you in the elevator with the football guy, football player. So Jeremy's question was, just to refresh your memory and any of our viewers, you got on an elevator with, was he a quarterback?
Yeah, he was. He was the quarterback. At the time, we went to college together. I mean, we didn't know each other, but we were in college at the same time, and so he was in college. It was his senior year, I guess.
So the story took place in college.
Yeah.
Oh, while you were in college. And then did the linemen just go like, no, you know who this guy is?
Yeah. They were like, they said something like, hey, do you know who he is? Referencing Cutler. And of course I did. Like, I went to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt football, it's not great now, but it was woeful at the time I was there. And he was like the only real star that the team produced in that period, and so of course I knew who he was, and I was like, yeah, I mean, of course I know who he is. So it was before he was like super famous, when he was more just regionally famous.
Right. Well, that clears a lot up for us, because sometimes we watch these and we're like left with more questions than answers.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes also I wouldn't say they get edited. There were certain stories that I told where when I watched it on television, there was stuff that had been taken out that I felt like gave more context.
Right.
So that happens sometimes as well.
And they're so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, thanks for being with us. We really, really enjoyed watching your run. What can you tell anyone that has been watching about the rest of your history with Jeopardy? You were in a tournament, right?
Yes, I was in the Tournament of Champions in the fall of 2017, the one that Buzzy Cohen won, and then in the All-Stars team tournament in the spring of 2019. It was the first time they had ever had teams play together, and it was the first change they had ever made to the format. One time in the early 90s, they did what they called Super Jeopardy, where they had a fourth contestant, and this was the first time since then that they had changed the format in any way. So I played on a team with Ben Ingram, who won the 2014 Tournament of Champions, and Julia Collins, who at that time was the second winningest contestant. She won 20 games in 2014. So, if they ever have another one and would like to have me back, I would be happy to go again.
Well, we would be happy if you went again too, because we love watching you.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
I just so then, do you want to talk about Final Jeopardy, Pat?
Yeah. So
I had a question about it at the end.
Sure.
Okay. So the category was the economy, and I didn't write down what the phrasing of this question was.
It was something like this is also known by another forward term. Systematically important financial institutions are also known by another forward term.
Right, a more colloquial term, right? Yeah. Or casual term. I got this one. Did you get it?
Did?
I did, yeah.
Not Janny.
I did get this one, and obviously Seth, you got this one. But but you weren't too jazzed to see the economy as a topic here?
No, the economy, like for a couple of reasons. One, it's such a broad category. I wasn't really sure what, like in terms of the economy, like what kind of question it was going to be. I had missed in the episode, a couple of episodes before, I think it's the 10th one where I played Walt and Erica. The final category was business, and I missed that one. So that had me a little spooked. And then the economy is like sort of notoriously a fluky category on Jeopardy. Ken Jennings lost on a business economy question in his long run. So I was pretty spooked, and it had worked for me twice before to bet small, and it still ended up winning. So I didn't think I was going to know it.
Well, it's interesting because the last time you were on our show here, I was sort of complimenting you on not being cocky and making small bets in Final Jeopardy when you based on your reaction, I figured that that's sort of how it ended for you. Because you were like, yeah, I know, that's good.
It worked 66% of the time for me, so it's hard for me to say that it was. Although, like a lot of the people who get super into the game theory stuff will tell you that it was a very suboptimal wager. And indeed, it was so I don't know that I want to say controversial, but Andy Saunders, who runs the website The Jeopardy Fan, wrote an article called "Seth Wilson's Wager Last Night Wasn't as Bad as You Think," where he crunched the numbers. And it turns out like my wagering strategy there was only like 2% less optimal than if I had bet to win. But yeah, I mean, I didn't, obviously, like in retrospect, I wish I had bet on myself. I wish that I had assumed, bet that I was going to know it, but it did work, it worked a couple of times. And in this one instance, a ton of credit to Margie. She knew exactly what she had to do and she did it. And then the question ended up being something that we both knew. I had said for years, as a fan of the show, that I felt like the worst way to lose would be to get the Final Jeopardy right, but not wager to win. And I feel like that is like, if I have any regrets, and I don't really, but if I had any regrets, it would be that I didn't wager more on that last question, just because, you tend to want to believe in yourself. You got there, you made it all the way onto the stage. But it had worked for me twice before to not do that. So I felt.
And you didn't know until after that you knew it,
Exactly, yeah. And I really didn't think I was going to. So.
And I think too that like, because this is where my mind always goes, is that you probably don't have a lot of time. But like how much strategy actually, because it's easy to like write that article and crunch the numbers and whatever. But like my mind doesn't work mathematically. Like my mind doesn't go, well, if she bets this and I bet this, then this will happen. And so do you just kind of go like, well, I'm not confident here, I'm going to bet low? Or do you actually like do that, like those machinations in your head?
They, it's one of the few times that they give you that they stop the cameras and give you time to think. So they bring you, a piece of scratch paper and a pen, and so you can do the math and check your calculations. And they give you, plenty of time. If you were to wait like 5 minutes, they would probably ask you, say like, all right, we need to get there. We need to get to the question. But you have plenty of time to think it through. And at that point, I was just like, well, this plan has worked for me twice before. From a maximizing winnings standpoint, it was not an optimal bet. It was Andy said it was a smarter bet than wagering nothing, because she might have just wagered $2,001 to cover me, and then I could have won with a $5 wager. But you get time. I'm not much of a mathematician, and I certainly didn't read as much about the strategy of there's they call it like there's a lock game, but then there's a crush game, and there's lots of different ways you can approach it. And I would advise someone who's going on the show to spend more time than I did thinking about that. But I mean, you have enough time to be confident-ish in what you're doing. It's not like you have to do it completely on the fly. but at the same time, if you make a mistake with it, it could be tricky to, you might second guess yourself after the moment, and certainly the internet will second guess you.
Well, the internet stinks. But then, you've been on the show for like 13 episodes now. When you do get the word that you that Margie had won and you wouldn't be moving on, was there any sort of like minor relief, or were you like, oh, I can go home now? Like,
I mean, I think, I was certainly really happy for her. I think that it was, she played a really great game, and she was really nice, and I really enjoyed getting to speak with her. Before,
she looked so happy.
Yeah, before, like, we had a really nice chat, and then afterward as well. But I think I was a little more disappointed than relieved, I would say. I mean, it was nice to come back home and to get back to my regular life, but I think that that there's always a sense of like, well, if only like these one or two things had gone a little bit differently. That's what was so confusing to me. Just aside from the fact that it would be illegal, and that it didn't make any sense to me when people suggested that James Holzhauer might have thrown the last game that he was in. Like, why would you do that? Like, you want to win them all. Right. You're playing the game and you're really trying to win. So, I mean, I think that like, I was certainly happy to have lost to somebody like Margie, who I thought was a really great contestant and a really nice person. But yeah, I mean, I was more eager to keep playing than I was relieved that I got to go home, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you did like winning.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I think I think anybody who's been on the show would tell you that it's more fun to win than to lose.
Throughout your run, are there contestants that sort of stick out in your mind that you like, for good or for bad? I'm sure you won't tell us the bad, but for instance, we have some favorites. We really enjoyed Dennis King, because he was bragging about being a prankster.
We love him.
Yeah, he was really memorable. Actually, Brian Havlinka, who I played against in game 2, who worked for
the Tequila Guy,
yeah. He and I watched the Super Bowl together that next winter, I guess. So like February of 2017. I happened to be in Houston, and that's where he was based at the time, and so I got in touch with him, and we went and saw the Super Bowl. Not in person. We watched it at the Falcons bar in Houston. But I mean, you don't get a ton of time with people, but I mean, everybody that I remember, and it's such a blur, but everybody that I remember interacting with was really nice and really excited to be there. I remember because Sharon, because I said that I was a Georgia fan and she's from Gainesville, so she gave me some ribbing about because Florida and Georgia are like bitter enemies in football. So she teased me a little bit about that. I remember that. I remember speaking with Dorcas Alexander from the first episode after they aired, and she said it was very nice of her. She said that a lot of her co-workers had been saying, "Oh, you're rooting for Seth to lose," and she was like, "No, if he beat me, I want him to do really well." And I feel like anybody that you lose to, you want them to go on to have like a really successful run.
Because you want to be like, well, look how good they are. That's how they beat me.
Yeah. Like, yeah, there's no shame in losing to somebody like that. I mean, there's no shame in losing at all. It's hard to get on the show in general.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody was it was a really positive experience all around. Kellen, who I think I played against in my 4th episode, she had just finished her PhD in theater studies, or maybe English lit, but she and I had gone to a couple of the same conferences and hadn't crossed paths before, but we bonded over that. So you find really interesting like connections between people as a part of the contestant experience.
That's cool. We have Austin Tyler Rogers on our show tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Which we're really excited about. Just wondering if you would have any kind of message or challenge for him.
He and I were both of the tournaments I've been in. I've played against him. I've never played against him, but he has been in the field both times. It's funny, like people have said, like, oh, that like the character that he seems to be playing is like so boisterous, and I always say, like, it's not a character. That's exactly what he's like. Tell him that I said hello. If we ever get out of quarantine, I look forward to coming to New York and playing trivia at his bar.
Yeah, cool.
Oh yeah, we should all go.
Yeah. It's in Hell's Kitchen. We should organize a big party.
I wonder if anyone does put on a character when they go on Jeopardy.
I think some people probably do. I mean, most people I think are so like focused on playing the game that that you don't really have time for that. But I'm sure there are some people who like kind of like ham it up a little.
I'm just gonna say it, Buzzy.
I don't know. Buzzy is also very much like that in person. Yeah. Because he and I were both in the same tournament of champions and the All-Star tournament, and that's very close to what his actual personality is like.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
All right, well, I think we should wrap it up for the day, but thank you so much, Seth. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a pleasure watching you. It's going to be weird to not have you in our lives anymore.
Well,
I might go back and rewatch.
What's that?
I might go back and rewatch a few.
Oh, well, please do. I would like for Netflix to get the idea that they should give me a game show or something to host.
Yes, Netflix, please.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
And if you're at home watching this or wherever, tune in tomorrow. We have Austin Tyler Rogers, as I said. Thanks so much. See you, Jan.
Bye, everybody.
I'm Seth Wilson. Be sure to watch There's Always Jeopardy at 6:30.
Although it was not a runaway for Seth in yesterday's game, he was.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in to There's Always Jeopardy every weekday at 6:30. Tomorrow we have another Jeopardy champion on, so you don't want to miss that. And we have Terrence and Patrick Balazzo coming on Wednesday to talk to us, so you don't want to miss that either. And don't forget, every Wednesday at 8 p.m., the DG special. It's going to be a special one because we got Nikki Payne, K. Trevor Wilson, Ryan Belville, Brian Barlow, and a special guest doing the DG special news. So please tune in. Thanks for coming. Come back tomorrow. We look forward to seeing you. We're starting a whole new season. See you later.